Hi, Julia. How are you doing?
Hi, great. So happy to be here.
Nice to have you here. I want to read a quote back to you. After you got the script for Hustlers, you said, quote, "I don't care if I have to make sandwiches and sweep the floors. I'll do anything to be a part of this movie." Mm-hmm. And you didn't have to make sandwiches or sweep the floors.
I didn't.
Okay.
But I would have.
What made you want to do this so bad?
I had read the article when it first came out in New York Magazine. So when I was sent the script and saw that it was based on that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was a crazy story. And then I really loved Lorene Scafaria's adaptation of it. I feel like you could tell this story 5 different ways. And I like that she has compassion for these women, and she really takes you like on a long journey. And that's really layered. She's very I think largely inspired by Jessica Pressler, who wrote the New York Magazine article, the character that I play, cares about her subjects. When I saw Jessica at a screening in New York, and I was like, oh, congratulations, like, how do you feel? She was more concerned about what the women in real life were going to take away from the film, and meaning that she's a journalist who cares about her subjects.
Yeah, right.
And I think that is reflected in the movie. And I don't know, I just think it's a really complicated story, and it blows my mind that it's a true story, but then also our film, I don't know, focuses on all the different perspectives on what happened.
Well, what is it about the original story, the story that you read, you found so interesting?
The idea that these women who were strippers and sex workers, they have no control really over their lives and livelihood, and they're, ridiculed and objectified and all that they totally turn the tables on these men. And Constance Wu's character in the movie says, I became the CEO of my own corporation. It was just interesting to me that they became entrepreneurs, really. I mean, obviously it's a crime what they did, and there are consequences to that, but
there's an autonomy there that's interesting.
The focus on power and control.
Yeah.
To me, it was really interesting.
And you got to spend some time with the actual journalist who wrote the piece. And what did you learn from spending time with her?
So when I was finally cast, I sent her a message on Instagram and said, I'm playing you in this movie. I think we should have coffee.
Yeah.
And I had been following her work,
she thought you were
too.
trying to scam her for millions of dollars, because I'm sure in her world, Julia Stiles doesn't just write her saying these kind of things to her, you know?
She
thought you were like a Nigerian prince or something.
She was like, yeah. No, I don't know. I think, I think she had already heard that I had been cast or something.
Okay.
But I had been following her work, too, because she wrote another article about this woman named Anna Delvey, and that I think now is being made into a movie as well. But I just really liked her writing. So I said, let's get together for coffee. And I ended up going to her apartment in Queens because she was working and I was working, and we both have young kids, and we couldn't figure out childcare. So I was like, well, I'll just bring my son to your house. Is that cool? And he proceeded to destroy her living room.
Oh, good.
While we talked about the film. And I just grilled her with a bunch of questions about everything from how she first got in touch with them, and how she goes about interviewing people. But I just grilled her about the whole experience.
Is there an added pressure representing a living person?
Kind of, but I made it really clear. I was like, don't worry, I'm not scrutinizing you. I'm not going to imitate you. We took some license. I think one of the biggest differences is that is kind of my wardrobe in the film, because I think generally New York Magazine writers are pretty hip, and Lorene Scafaria, our director, really wanted me to sort of represent the opposite side of privilege. So there's a scene with Constance where she asked me what college I went to, and I say Brown, which is an expensive liberal arts college, and Constance's character couldn't even graduate high school. She ended up getting her GED. So the idea that I represent somebody that was sort of born into privilege, and that is reflected in my wardrobe, so it's a bit more conservative. And anyway, we took some license because for the sake of the movie.
You know, it's funny, you mentioned the word power a bunch of times, and I think power is something we're talking about a lot these days. I mean, I had a conversation with Edward Norton yesterday kind of entirely about power and when you have power and when to use it. What did you learn about power making this film?
I really like that there's you really understand that these women, the financial strain that they were under.
Yeah.
The sort of illusion of power because they feel very powerful up on stage, you know,
As dancers. Yeah.
but that can be deceptive. And they feel really powerful maybe in the champagne room being, you know, sexy, but then it can so easily turn where guys are throwing trash at them.
Right.
Power, I guess, can be very elusive, maybe, is what I learned.
Yeah. But then when you take it for yourself, then when you're able to kind of do what these people did.
Power can be really intoxicating. I
Yeah.
think they got seduced by, or it was exhilarating for them to finally be pulling in all this money and in control of their nights. But obviously,
In a bad way.
it got to be dangerous.
Yeah, right.
And then very quickly it was taken away from them because they were arrested.
Right.
The interesting thing for me playing the journalist was in interviews, I was very conscious of not making the subject self-conscious. And there are points, especially with Constance's character and Jennifer's character, where they get really defensive and kind of tough with me. And so there's a bit of jockeying for power in terms of, you know, how much longer the conversation's going to go on, if that makes any sense.
No, it certainly does. It was also interesting to watch this film about dance. And I don't mean to be too glib here, but see you not be the dancer in the film.
Right.
I'm so used to you.
You wanted to see me get up on the pole?
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. That's the thing that's going to take me down.
No. Oh, am I not allowed to make jokes like that?
Of course, you can make jokes whatever you want. I'm only joking around. I
Yeah.
don't think I am.
Right. I can. You can.
Yeah, that might be it. But it was interesting not to see you dancing because you've been dancing for a very long time. Do you still dance every now and then?
Alone in my living room, sure, all the time. But I think because my character's interviewing the women after the fact, after they've already been arrested and put on trial, or whatever, taken plea bargains, and they've already gone. They're looking back on what happened. It wouldn't really make sense for me to be there.
Sure.
In the 2008 portion, I think that there were versions of the script where there were like kind of weird dream sequences where I was involved because as the journalist and the eyes and ears for the audience, I'm kind of the judge and jury. I think that they had these sort of weird dream sequences where I would be in the club scenes,
wistfully wishing that you could be in the club scenes, or
in the club scenes, or in some of the scenes where the men were like unconscious. But it was a bit confusing.
Right. But I just mean the training. I'm imagining that people were dancing on set, and you're like, I can do that, for God's sake.
Oh, please. I have mad respect for all of them because whatever dancing I've done, I've never done in like 4-inch stiletto platform shoes.
But you started dancing really young, right? When did you start dancing?
Every time you say that, I think of pole dancing,
No,
and
I mean
it sounds really awkward to me. No,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
No,
was 8.
I mean, whatever. Yeah, exactly. I
It's a
was.
tragic story. It's my next film.
I was. Yeah, I mean, I did ballet, and I was pretty bad at ballet, to be honest, and eventually couldn't go on point. So then I sort of switched to modern and tap and jazz and all that.
Your mom was an artist, right? Mm-hmm. Is she still with us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's worth asking, right? Is she still making art? A potter, is that right?
She makes ceramics, yeah. And she has a store. I grew up in New York City, and she had a store like on Bleecker Street for a while, and in Tribeca, and but yeah, she says to me, artists never retire.
Do you feel that way?
It makes sense.
Yeah. Does she still have a kiln? Does she have a kiln?
She does. She had 5 in our loft in Soho that I grew up in, and then downsized, and they live in the country now, and she has 2.
Did the arts feel like an option to you, or did it feel like something that was just predestined to happen?
An option, yeah. I mean, I don't take for granted that some parents expect their kids to. The priority is to make money, and that's what is considered successful. And my mom was always encouraging me to love what I do, whether it's lucrative or not.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, you were 11 years old when you first started?
11 or 12.
Yeah.
It's debatable, but I think I was about to turn 12, and I insisted that I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she had a friend who was a production designer or a set designer for a theater company, like a really off Broadway fringe theater company.
Yeah.
And I was really into playing dress up and pretend, and they were like, yeah, we'll put you in one of our shows. And I had 3 lines, and I made $100.
That's pretty good.
So I was like,
It's probably pretty good by these days standards too.
Yeah, exactly. Not bad for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I think I'd probably do that for $100. But when did you realize that this is something that, because I know when I speak to actors, it goes from I enjoy playing dress up. I like getting on stage. Frankly, sometimes it's like I like getting a lot of attention to being like, oh, this is a vehicle for empathy. This is something that I'm good at. This is something that I can like dig deeper into people's psychology by doing this. Like when was there sort of a change for you where you went from, oh, this is fun putting on this silly shirt to, oh, wow, I can actually do some interesting work here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you become an adult, you're starting to think more that way. It probably was more like, as a teenager auditioning for acting jobs, and then even when I started working more, I would say like around 17, I wasn't thinking of a career. It was just something that was fun and interesting to me. But then I think probably in my 20s, and even now, I'm like, oh, actors are truth tellers, or there's an expression. There's an expression called l'esprit d'escalier. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's the spirit of the stairs. But it means that thing when if you imagine somebody like walking up the stairs and turning around and saying the thing that the sort of like mic drop moment.
Yeah,
the thing that you always wish.
The jerk store call, they're running out of you. Yeah, they're like, just.
Yeah, the thing that you always wish that you could say or had the courage to say or do.
Sure.
I think I've discovered now that that's kind of what appeals to me about acting, is that we act out these things that we wish we had the courage to do in real life.
They say that's the problem with Twitter, hey? They say the problem with Twitter is we have an entire generation of people who were trained, while we're in the car on the way home, you know what I should have said to them?
Right.
But now you have an opportunity to get your phone out and kind of do it.
Still not quite as satisfying as if you said it in real life, but...
No, certainly not. But I think that, like, what I find interesting about what you just said is that you went to school for a while, right? You kind of stopped acting and went to university for a while, right? And I think most people when they're doing that, and this is just my non-acting knowledge of this thing, it's usually something that I would think, oh, well, you may not go back after that. Oh, I've had enough of this life. I want to live a life like all the other kids. I want to live a life like all my peers. I want to go off and do something completely different. What I find interesting is that you were acting from such a young age. You go to school and then you actually come back. It doesn't seem too conflicted.
I definitely in university entertained the idea of what would other career possibilities be. Partially, in just deciding what I was going to study and also seeing my peers exploring other avenues. But I always came back to acting, probably because I didn't think I could do anything else. But something just drew me back. It's it's an amazing job. I get to travel the world. I get to meet interesting people. I have a voice. I get to tell stories. And like any job, I'm sure there are frustrations and times when I question things or feel like I'm not in control of what I'm doing. But it's a great job.
How do you reflect on being? I'm trying to figure out how to put this gently. When I told my friends I was...
put it harshly.
Sure. How do you feel about getting old? Like when you're... I was telling my friend yesterday that I was interviewing you, and she said, oh, my God, 10 things I hate about you. Oh, my God, I just love... Oh, my God, these movies meant so much to me. How do you feel about being Julia Stiles, person here in front of me right now, going to go get a sandwich later or something like that, and then also sort of being... Or like Julia, the person I'm talking to, who's going to have a sandwich later, and then there's like Julia Stiles, like icon of someone's childhood or these kind of very precious moments. Well, they are. They're precious moments. They mean a lot to people, that these specific films you made sort of filled voids. What's your relationship with nostalgia and with that time in your life?
That's cool. I don't walk around going, I'm an icon.
I know, but people must say it to you.
I think I'd be a jerk if I did. But I appreciate that. I don't take for granted that people still think about a movie that was made 20 years ago. That's like a huge privilege as an actor, and you hope that people want to watch what you do and that something resonates with them. And I don't mean just in terms of like ego and fame. I mean that I was part of something that I was part of something that resonates with people. So when I did 10 Things I Hate About You, I had been auditioning as an actress, and I was 17, and I was so sick of and confused by everybody going, oh, just be more bubbly and effervescent. Oh, you're so serious. Oh, you're so heady. You're intellectual, or whatever it was. It just was confusing to me as I'm trying to figure out who I am and what people respond to. And
you're how old?
I was 17,
oh, yeah.
And then I got sent the script for 10 Things I Hate About You, and I was like, yes, this girl is feisty and opinionated and a fish out of water, but not apologetic about it. And I just thought it spoke to me. So then to be able to do the film and then have people talk about it 20 years later, I'm like, oh, it spoke to other people too.
It certainly did. I can picture. I don't know about you guys. I can picture myself where I was when I watched the VHS for the first time. And,
VHS.
I know. I know. It is the 20th anniversary of that film. Can you tell me a story about that sticks in your mind about filming that
Excuse me.
film?
A story.
What comes to mind?
God, very little comes to mind because it was 20 years ago, and so much has happened since then. But it was a really fun summer. We spent a lot of time at the Sheraton in Tacoma, Washington. We were all really, really excited to be there and open-hearted and you know, open to, not jaded yet, like open to hanging out with each other. Heath Ledger brought a didgeridoo with him from Australia. And I had never been drunk before, so the scene where I'm like dancing on the table and having to be drunk, I needed tips from all the rest of the cast who were older. Like, what is that like? Yeah.
It's a very sweet story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But literally, they like explained it to me. It wasn't like, oh, here, get drunk, here to have a shot, because obviously that's illegal.
Right.
But it was.
And this is public radio.
But it was like,
and the
I just
cops
remember
are
it was like
listening,
acting lessons on like, oh yeah, you get a little wobbly, and you cut, if you like lower your eyelids a little bit and look like you're sort of blurry eyed. That's what it's like.
I want to talk about a couple of the other roles before we let you go. I mean, we also know you from Save the Last Dance and from O. In both, your character is part of a biracial couple. Even in 2001, when those films came out, this wasn't that common on screen. But I did hear a story that you got hate mail. You got pushback on that. Is that
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've never really talked about it that much in interviews, but it came up once recently.
Well, if you'd like to, it's up to you.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So when I did those movies, I was like, really, this is still an issue? Like, black people and white people don't get along?
Yeah.
Or some people look down on or uncomfortable with the idea of an interracial romance. And then I was surprised that, yeah, it actually still was provocative. And yeah, I was at Columbia, and the school contacted my parents and said they were getting threats or something. I don't know. It kind of blocked it out. And then they wanted to have like a security detail follow me around. And I was like, really? That's so awkward. So I just kind of brushed it off, and I was like, no, I'll be fine. And luckily I was.
Yeah.
So I don't know how serious it was. I didn't take it very seriously because I guess for self-protection, but it was from a white person who called me the N-word lover or something like that. You know, hateful, horrible stuff. Probably the person was crazy.
It sounds terrifying.
I honestly did not take it very seriously, just for self-protection. Like I didn't want to be walking around school afraid or draw attention to myself with a bodyguard. That's ridiculous.
You're right, because what seemed like just kind of sweet, I mean, dark at times, but sweet movies to me that I watched in theaters with my friends. I guess there are people out there who would take that stuff very, very seriously in a very hateful sort of way. It's still kind of surprising to me.
It surprises me too, but it's becoming more and more apparent now.
Well, I was going to ask, right? Like you said in 2001, it's hard to believe that people would still feel this way, but it feels like in 2019 we're still having these kind of conversations.
Oh yeah, it's terrifying, or it's disappointing, really. But it's not going to change what I do.
Mm-hmm. Before we let you go, I want to talk about one more sort of difference, and this is kind of going back to Hustlers. So the cast and the crew, overwhelmingly female. That's something I know a lot of people want to see more of in the industry. Can you contrast working on this film with perhaps the way it felt working on a film in the 90s?
Yeah, I don't think this movie would have been made in the 90s, or if it had been, it would have been approached very differently. It's just, I don't know, it's such an affirmation. It's so, I'm so excited that this movie could be made, that Lorene Scafaria directed it the way she did, because she's a woman, but also because she's even just on her own merit. She has so much compassion for these characters. It was a really from the top down, really lovely set to be on. Everyone was very respectful, given that the subject matter is very sensitive, and also she had a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun to be had too. She really showed how intoxicating it was for these women to be, taking control of and bringing in so much cash. To be somewhat independent too. And I think that in the 90s, the focus would have been a lot different. It might have been more about the victimization of these men, or it would have just been nonstop pole dancing, sort of more. There's a lot of the sexiness in the film, and Jennifer Lopez does an amazing dance routine, but it just would have been different.
But even I'm also just the way it felt being on set, I bet would have been different.
Yeah, probably depending on who directed it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that if a man had directed it, it would have been worse. I just think that it depends on what kind of director. Like if they were going to be, a tyrant, which I think maybe happened a little bit more in the 90s. I shouldn't say that because I've never really worked with any.
Sure, but I think it's fair to say that's probably the case, right?
Yeah.
It's what I'm hearing you saying is that it feels like things are getting a little bit better overall.
Definitely. I think when I was in my 20s, I would have been worried about where my career was going now, and I think that the opportunities for me and my peers are really exciting, and this movie is an example of that. Also, by the way, if this movie had been made in the 90s, it's confusing because we did really treat it like a period piece, and the stock market crash in 2008 is a huge part of what triggers these events. Yeah. And obviously, it would have been, you can't go back to the future.
Or if you've been able to predict that, you would have made some money.
True.
Yeah.
True.
It was nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. I like your voice is so soothing. It's a pleasure to listen to you.
God love you.
Yeah.
That's very nice of you. And I've been a big fan of yours for such a long time, man. Like it's
thanks.
It's a little freaky.
Likewise. Right back at you.
We're freaking each other out here on the radio.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer a question for me that we're kind of asking everybody?
Yeah, I would love to.
How tall are you? No, that's not it. It's what's a film that changed your life?
Oh, changed my life. That's a good one because that's not like you're like a fan of or what's your favorite film. A film that changed Desperately Seeking Susan. I'll go back that far because I watched it in the actual theater that's in the film. So it's Madonna, like iconic Madonna, Rosanna Arquette comedy about how do I even describe it? Anyway, it takes place in the East Village in New York, and I grew up in downtown Manhattan, and the Bleecker Street Cinema was featured in the film, and I was literally like 4 or 5 years old when it came out. And I insist that my mother took me to that theater to watch it. And I just so fell in love with Madonna and her style and like her independence and her freedom and just how cool she was running around the East Village. And it's like I wanted to be her. I think like a lot of young girls. But it kind of blows my mind that it was not probably not an appropriate movie for a 4-year-old to see or a 5-year-old, but I did. And it stuck with me.
Did you ever get a chance to talk to Madonna about it?
No. I did meet her, actually.
Oh, yeah? What's she like?
I don't remember. I think I was too, like, starstruck to even register it. But, no, she's, I have mad respect for her. But there was something about there was something, like, such cute, quirky moments in that film where she goes and she goes to, like, Penn Station and she dries her armpit in the hairdryer.
Yeah.
Or the automatic hand dryer. She was just so freaking cool in it. I dressed up as that character for Halloween a few times. It's a good one
Christ,
if you ever need a Halloween costume.
Oh, I'll keep it in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd look good. I think it'd turn out well.
You could do it. You'd have to shave your beard.
You know what?
You don't want to offend Madonna.
What? This is all attached anyway. This is all
okay.
This is all wardrobe anyway. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.